Do you experience nocturia, the need to awaken during the night to urinate? This phenomenon is a source of considerable distress, as it not only fragments sleep architecture but also contributes to significant daytime impairment. What therapeutic strategies can be implemented? That is the clinical focus of our discussion. I will outline 8 effective interventions designed to significantly reduce nocturnal micturition episodes. This information, I assure you, holds the potential to substantially improve your quality of life. Welcome to the Female Health Podcast, where we explore the evidence-based realities of women's health that often remain unaddressed in public discourse. I am sincerely grateful for your engagement. I am Dr. Lily Stones, a gynecologist and specialist in intimate health psychology with over 30 years of experience dedicated to helping women achieve comfort, self-confidence, and somatic control. Before we proceed, I want to share a special announcement. Memberships are now available on this channel. By joining, you gain access to exclusive benefits, prioritized responses to your questions, and a private chat forum for direct consultation. It is a secure, personal space for our community, and I encourage you to consider joining. Let us comments. Most women over 60 assume that recurrent nocturnal awakening for urination is an inevitable consequence of aging. You may have normalized this, accepting it as your new baseline. But what if this premise is incomplete? What if the constant interruptions, fragmented sleep, and morning fatigue are not simply fate, but conditions you can proactively modify? I have repeatedly observed patients who believed they were perpetually burdened by this condition discover minor behavioral and physiological adjustments that restored the deep, uninterrupted sleep they thought was permanently lost. 8 strategies for nocturia management. Here is the professional commitment. The 8 strategies I will explain today will not only enhance your understanding of the etiology of nocturia, but also provide practical, actionable steps for resolution. The final strategy, patients often describe as the most impactful, the one that allowed them to achieve sustained sleep and awaken feeling restored. Stay with me until the end, as that final secret integrates all the preceding points. Consider this: your sleep cycle does not begin precisely when your head touches the pillow. It begins 2 hours prior. The activities during this 2-hour window are a silent determinant of whether you will experience peaceful sleep or whether you will be frustrated, pulling back the covers, and heading to the lavatory. Most women fail to recognize this. They state, "But Dr. Stones, it was only one small glass of water or just a cup of tea." Yet, even that minimal fluid ingestion can be the differential factor between sustained sleep and a 200 a.m. awakening. 1. Fluid restriction window. Your bladder is an involuntary organ. It does not differentiate between plain water, herbal tea, or moderate alcohol consumption. Once fluid is introduced, the bladder executes its function. When its walls reach a certain threshold of distension, it transmits an unavoidable signal. This signal fragments deep sleep, disrupts the dream cycle, and necessitates ambulation to the bathroom. Furthermore, a point many women overlook is that once your sleep is broken, it is rarely possible to return to the same quality of restorative rest. You lose not just minutes, but the deep, restorative phase of sleep that replenishes energy, sharpens cognition, and modulates mood. This is why something as simple as your last fluid intake of the evening is far more consequential than commonly assumed. Therefore, the first and most fundamental step is this: implement a fluid restriction window 2 hours prior to your intended bedtime. If medication absolutely necessitates a fluid chaser, limit it to a single, small sip. This single behavioral modification, as minor as it appears, is often the initial building block for an uninterrupted night of rest. 2. Elimination of bladder irritants. However, it is not solely the volume of fluid that is critical. It is the composition of the fluid. Some women can consume the same beverage at midday without issue, yet post-dinner ingestion provokes an acute bladder response. Certain beverages function as direct bladder stimulants. They do not merely fill the bladder, they irritate the detrusor muscle, making it hyperactive, restless, and excessively sensitive, so that even when not truly full, it demands attention. You may notice that some nights are significantly worse than others, despite adherence to the same routine. The differential factor is often the composition of the liquid, as not all beverages are equal in their effect on the lower urinary tract. What are the primary culprits? We begin with the obvious: caffeine and alcohol. That evening cup of coffee or single serving of wine may temporarily soothe the mind, but they can induce bladder agitation for hours. Even decaffeinated or lower alcohol versions can contain sufficient irritants to cause trouble. The factor most women miss involves less obvious irritants that may only affect specific individuals. Some find that citrus products, carbonated beverages, or artificial sweeteners sustain bladder activity long after bedtime. Not every irritant affects every woman, but if your sleep is fragmented, this warrants investigation. I recommend a simple exclusion test for my patients. Observe your quality of sleep after entirely skipping just one of these irritants. Compare this to nights when you indulge. That observed difference, that one night of deeper, calmer rest, can provide more diagnostic clarity than any chart. Imagine staying in bed, warm and deeply sleeping, instead of ambulating at 200 a.m. This single choice can determine the difference between a fragmented night and a whole one. 3. Execution of a double void even with meticulous fluid and irritant avoidance. Another common trap exists within the urination process itself. Most women, when asked, confirm that they are absolutely certain their bladder is empty before sleep. Yet, the surprising clinical truth is that many women never fully empty their bladder, even when they believe they have done so. This single error can subtly rob them of hours of restorative sleep. Consider the mechanics of pouring liquid from a container. You tilt it, the flow subsides, and you assume it is empty. However, tilting it slightly further releases residual liquid. Your bladder operates similarly. It often retains just enough residual urine that, within an hour or two, this small volume becomes the impetus for nocturnal awakening. The challenge is that this residual volume is often unnoticed. You attribute the awakening to bladder weakness or aging, when in fact, that small retained volume is shortening your night. This small leftover volume exerts constant, low-level pressure on the bladder walls. The bladder misinterprets this pressure as urgency, triggering a false alarm system that compels you to wake up. The technique to correct this is the double void. After the initial voiding, stand up, perform a brief, non-strenuous activity, e.g., brushing your hair or walking a few steps, and then attempt to void a second time. This often releases the residual volume. This simple practice can dramatically alter your night, potentially gaining 2, 3, or even 4 uninterrupted hours before the bladder signals again. By achieving true complete bladder emptying before sleep, you significantly reduce the potential for pressure-induced awakenings. 4. Medication timing adjustment, diuretics. Another silent counter agent to sleep is something that is neither food, nor drink, nor habit. It is often concealed within a routine pharmacological regimen. Many women adhere rigorously to all pre-sleep protocols: fluid restriction, irritant avoidance, and double voiding. Yet the nocturnal awakening persists. The solution is frequently hidden in plain sight. The medication relied upon for health may be the cause of sleep fragmentation. The issue is not the drug itself, but the chronology of administration. Medication is swallowed before bed, and 2 hours later, the bladder necessitates attention. This is often because the drug is shifting bodily fluids, directing them toward the bladder at the precise wrong time. This occurs most frequently with diuretics, commonly known as water pills. These are important, often essential, medications. However, administering them before bed essentially guarantees a restless night. The corrective action is not discontinuation. Never do this without medical consultation. The solution is adjusting the timing. Moving the administration to earlier in the day, typically around midday, allows the medication to complete its peak diuretic action while you are awake, allowing the bladder to quiet down before nightfall. This minor modification in pharmacology can profoundly improve nocturnal rest. 5. Dietary moderation of salt and sugar, even with optimal medication timing. Something else on your plate may still be stimulating the bladder, the hidden link between excessive sugar and salt intake and nocturnal micturition. Some nights, the problem is not fluid intake, it is food consumption. A meal with high sugar or salt content can disrupt sleep hours later. The assumption is often, I didn't drink anything after dinner, so why am I still awake? The reality is that high levels of sugar and salt can stimulate the bladder as effectively as a late evening fluid load. High blood glucose levels, especially in the evening, result in excess sugar excretion into the urine. Sugar in the bladder acts as an irritant, causing bladder wall reactivity and triggering the urge. Similarly, high salt intake promotes systemic fluid retention throughout the day. When you become recumbent at night, gravity shifts, that fluid rapidly re-enters the bloodstream, and the kidneys immediately increase filtration. The result is a bladder that fills rapidly just as you are attempting to sleep. The culprits are not always the obviously salty foods. They include sauces, processed snacks, and seemingly healthy frozen meals that contain surprisingly high sodium levels. With sugar, the trigger is not only dessert, but often pasta sauces, breads, and cereals. The corrective strategy is moderation, not complete elimination, particularly with the evening meal. Patients who reduce hidden sugars and salts in their dinner often report calmer nights within days. 6. Management of dependent edema, leg elevation. The next factor involves the lower extremities. Most of the day is spent upright, walking, standing, or sitting, which places continuous pressure on the circulatory system. By evening, this results in dependent edemas, swollen ankles, tighter shoes, and calf heaviness. The unrecognized mechanism is this: the fluid sequestered in the lower extremities does not remain static. The moment you become supine at night, gravity shifts. The pooled fluid flows back into the bloodstream. The body perceives this as excess fluid volume and directs it straight to the bladder via the kidneys. The nocturnal awakening is therefore not due to late night drinking, but to the fluid retained in the legs throughout the day. The intervention is a simple evening ritual. Elevate your legs, on a pillow or recliner for a short period before bed. This allows the fluid to return to circulation while you are still awake, preventing the nocturnal diuresis. Alternatively, compression stockings, worn during the day, gently prevent fluid pooling. Women who implement this strategy often report a significant reduction in nocturnal awakenings, with a direct positive impact on daytime energy and mood. 7. Bladder retraining, urgency suppression. Even with comprehensive management of fluids, diet, medication, and edema, the bladder may still signal urgency at night. This is often because the neural connection between the bladder and the brain has become dysfunctional, requiring retraining. Over time, many women lose the fine-tuned control of the bladder. The bladder sends a signal of need, and instead of calmly assessing the volume, the brain reacts with panic. The impulse is to rush, even if the bladder is not truly full. This panic loop, repeated nightly, becomes a learned physical habit. The powerful intervention is urgency suppression, a core component of bladder retraining. When you feel the sudden urge, pause. Take a deep breath. Then, perform 3 to 5 rapid pelvic floor contractions, Kegel exercises, executed quickly at the moment of urgency. The effect is an almost immediate diminution of the sharp, overwhelming urge. The bladder calms, and the brain reclaims executive control. This allows you to walk calmly to the bathroom, or even successfully delay the voiding. Studies confirm that practicing this technique regularly can significantly reduce nocturnal voiding episodes. 8. Consistency, the unifying principle. Every single modification, fluid adjustment, irritant avoidance, optimal voiding, timing of medication, dietary control, and edema management contributes to reducing the frequency of nocturnal urination. However, the final secret that unifies all these principles is consistency. Each sip you adjust, every irritant you avoid, every habit you reshape becomes far more powerful when coupled with consistent, daily adherence to these protocols. Piece by piece, these steps layer together. The reward is nights that are fully yours again. Peaceful sleep is not a luxury or a wish. It is a physiological necessity and a right. And through these 8 evidence-based adjustments, it can be yours again.